Welcome to the Friends with Lens podcast, where inspiration meets storytelling and where we encourage you to follow your dreams. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the Friends with Lens podcast. My name is Joe Lenz, and today we are joined by someone very special to me. She is a yoga guru, a Lululemon ambassador, the owner and creator of Prana Planner, a current college-level teacher of yoga studies, a producer for an online yoga and fitness platform, and most of all, one of my dearest friends. Please welcome Stephanie Serrano.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this.
The inaugural episode. This has been long awaited. I'm beyond excited. There's a lot of fear and procrastination on my part that led to this taking so long to kind of come about. But I'm so excited to have you. I think that when I came up with the idea of doing this podcast and the theme of doing this podcast, you were one of the first people that came to mind, not just because you're such a close friend of mine, but because you wear a lot of hats and you do a lot of things that revolve around yoga, which is the thing that you're most passionate about. And I can't wait to get into your journey and, how you got to this point now. So we're going to go ahead and get started with just really take me through. So you went to Cal State Long Beach, right? What did you study at Cal State Long Beach?
I was a communication studies major.
Comm major.
Yes.
Let's go. All right.
And I definitely didn't take it in terms of it's the easy major. I'm just here to have fun. I was genuinely interested in the content of that curriculum. So, it's not to say that I was doing that to take the easy way out, but comm major, had a lot of fun, learned some interesting.
When you were at Cal State Long Beach, is that when you started practicing yoga? Was when you were going to school there?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I was a student at the time when I started practicing yoga. I wish that I had known that there were yoga courses offered at Cal State Long Beach where you could take it over the course of a semester. But at that time I had just found local yoga studios and was kind of bouncing around because there was a college student. I was like, where can I get my next free week? And so that's how I found it. And I'm glad I did at that time.
Well, yeah, sure. Of course. As far as how, when you first walked in, was there a moment where you realized that you loved doing this so much that you wanted to give back to the community by eventually becoming a teacher for yoga?
So I remember so vividly the first yoga class that I ever took. And something really cool that the teacher did was he took us through one side of the body. Like we did a bunch of stuff on the left side first, and he had us lay on our backs and observe the differences from our left and our right side. And I had never felt that physically in my body, this sense of openness and spaciousness and goodness. And it was such a stark difference between my left and my right side. And I was like, how is this possible? This is wild to me. We did the other side, went into Shavasana, and I was just like, I literally feel high right now. This feels so incredible. And so that kind of just kicked off my healthy addiction to taking yoga. And it wasn't until a couple years after that I was approached by someone at my yoga studio who invited me to do teacher training. And at that point was when I thought, okay, well, maybe this could lead to something. And I guess that's kind of always been my perspective and outlook with everything that I've done is I've been invited, whether it's been by a friend or a colleague or maybe a little message that I receive, somehow, some way it gets to me, inviting me to do something. And I always just think, I have no idea where this is going to go, but I'm going to just do it and see what happens.
I love that.
That's
I love
been
that.
my philosophy.
That's a great story. As far as the overall mental, you talked about like you having that feeling when you first did yoga that kind of hooked you, right? That feeling on the left side, the right side, that calmness feeling, that feeling of just being internal and having that awareness of yourself. Do you feel like I said? I guess I should ask. What do you think the overall mental benefits are to just doing yoga for anybody that's new to yoga? Anybody that may be curious about wanting to do yoga for the first time, and obviously, what are the benefits that you get personally get from yoga?
Oh gosh, the list is so long. The mental benefits, to answer your first question. When I think of wellness, there's so many different dimensions that go into that. So there's the emotional wellness portion, the mental awareness portion, the physical wellness portion. And so I it's hard for me to answer the mental piece without speaking to all of these other components that create a holistic, healthy, thriving person. But mentally, uh, yoga, which I think this branch of yoga doesn't get highlighted enough, but the mental component of it is, being able to create life management skills, to find a sense of belonging, find a sense of passion and purpose. And I think that someone who has never done yoga or isn't familiar with yoga, when they think, oh my gosh, how can this physical practice lead to a sense of belonging and finding your purpose and life management skills? It's really surprising what you learn about yourself when you step on that yoga mat and you apply principles that you take from this physical practice and put it into the rest of your life. And on top of that, like, that's just the physical branch of yoga as an avenue to get to everything else. There's, like I said, so many other dimensions of yoga that aren't part of mainstream that can help an individual on all of these different levels and components that make up what wellness is. And how yoga has helped me personally. Oh my gosh, I mean, it's changed my life. I have been teaching yoga for now almost 11 years and practicing yoga for, I guess, 13 years. And again, like, it all started because I found a local yoga studio. I fell in love with doing the practice myself. I then began teaching just on a whim because I thought, hey, this could be fun. Let's see what happens, which then led me into this whole career path that I've done now, which is like studio operations, content development, product development, ambassadorships. So, uh, yoga has just changed my life in the terms of the trajectory of where I've gone career wise. But it also has changed my life for the better in so many other ways, such as like my physical health, my mental health, my emotional resilience. And again, just touching on all the things I mentioned before, finding a sense of passion and purpose, life management skills, interpersonal relationship skills. And I would also say the most important of that, which kind of now recently has been more of the guiding light, has been that yoga has really connected me to a spiritual practice that I have always longed for, or I guess felt in my body and in my heart, but had never really known, you know, how to practice in this way, or I guess what the real truth is, I guess, in the sense of my mind. And so spiritually, I would say yoga has been kind of just like this guiding light that has really transformed everything that I do.
That's amazing. I think that if anybody hears that answer and they're still wondering whether they should do yoga or not, they're probably convinced on trying it out.
I hope
uh,
so.
but one of the so as you know, one of the main focuses or main themes of this podcast is talking about how people go from making that decision of wanting to, they graduate from college, they want to pursue their career, but they don't know which route to take. There's really just two routes here, right? You have maybe a passion for something. There's a lot of risk involved. There's not a lot of security behind it financially. Um, and so they end up taking the route of the 9 to 5 rat race and doing something that pays the bills, something that puts a roof over their head, that gets them to live comfortably financially. But they may not be all in or completely in love with what they do. And therefore, maybe they find something creative on the side, a passion project, a podcast like myself, or they decide to take the leap of faith, right? They decide to go and take that risk of pursuing what they love and just seeing how it plays out and having that faith that everything is going to play out in their favor and that, they'll prevail. And I think your story is very unique because you weren't, while you, a lot of people know you for teaching yoga and being involved in the yoga community, that's not necessarily where you started coming out of college. I know that when you and I first met, you were working for a private airline jet suite, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you quit your job. I believe you went on a trip, right, to Central America. Was it Central America?
Yes, Central
Okay.
and South. Mm-hmm.
Central and South America. You come back from that trip and you start looking for work again, and you have to make this decision on what you want to do career wise. Walk me through that. Walk me through that like mental state that you were in, and how you made the decision to basically put all your chips on the table and go all in on yoga.
Yeah, well, you're correct. So I started, working. My first job out of college was exactly how you mentioned. Like when you graduate, it's like, let me get a job. Let me just start making money. We'll figure it out as we go. And so I got really lucky in the sense that my last semester of college, I had an internship with this company, Jet Suite, who, when I graduated, offered me a job right away. And I had the pleasure of working for this private aviation company for 4 years. It was so much fun. I learned so much working for a startup company. But the second half of my career with them, so those last 2 years, I was just feeling this itch of like, I'm not feeling fulfilled. I don't know this job that I potentially thought I could work for, and in this industry I could work for the rest of my life. It was starting to just look a little daunting to me. So, and also I was at this point in my life where I would drive around Long Beach and just it kind of like gave me the ick. I was like, the last thing I want to do right now is buy a house and start a family and get married. Like, I want to travel the world. Like, there's something that I am missing. And my boyfriend and I decided to save up our money, and we were going to do just that. We were both going to quit our jobs and we were going to go travel. We bought a one-way ticket to Costa Rica. The only plan we had was to go to Envision Music Festival, and the rest we were just going to figure out when we get there, and we would come back home when we ran out of money. So we traveled for almost 5 months, from Costa Rica all the way down south to Ecuador. And it was a trip of a lifetime. I work with a lot of college students nowadays, and my biggest piece of advice is, if you have the time and the means to do a trip like that, like buy a one-way ticket and go backpacking, do it. You will not regret it. There's so many life lessons that you'll learn about yourself and whoever you travel with. and about just the culture and how the world works when you go on a trip like this. And so this was kind of like my eat, pray, love sort of thing. Like we quit our jobs, packed our bags, left. And when we were on our way back home, back to the States, that was when reality obviously was starting to kick in. And I was like, okay, so I worked for this private aviation company. It wasn't fulfilling, but I had been teaching yoga on the side. That's when I kind of realized that, well, that's when I really realized that I am very passionate about yoga. I want to be more involved in it. And I think that the company that I'm currently teaching for can help me understand this industry a little bit more, because at the time I was teaching for Core Power Yoga and it still is like this huge national brand. So I came back and I told Corpara that I wanted to learn how to manage a yoga studio. I wanted to learn the ins and outs of the operations and facility and like how to run everything. So I started off again, just kind of got really lucky in an opportunity where they offered me an entry level management position, worked my way up through there. And again, I felt this sense of not feeling fulfilled anymore. Like I kind of felt like I had reached a point where I'm like, okay, is this it? Like, is this all there is to it? And so I then decided to get more education in this subject that I love. So I got my master's degree in yoga studies at the only university in the world that you can get a master's degree in yoga studies, which is Loyola Marymount University. Shout out to my alma mater. But I did this 2-year program, got my master's degree with the intention of wanting to take everything that I've learned and all that I've done so far in the yoga community, but bring it into an academic setting. My desires at the time shifted to, I guess because I was getting older, I was finding that if I really want to do better in my yoga community, which in large helps the world, I should be bringing this to a population that can really benefit from it, who is also going to be the future of where we live, which, are college students. So college students are always stressed. They're, obviously trying to figure out what they're going to do when they graduate. So yoga is such a perfect tool to help you do that. So that's also another reason why I wanted to do the master's program. I was like, if I want to teach at a college, I have to have a master's degree. So did that. Again, just divine timing. Right when I graduated, I got offered a position to work and teach at a community college. So started teaching at Orange Coast College in Orange County, and then COVID happened. I got furloughed because I wasn't a senior faculty member. Makes sense. But at that time, which I love to refer to as the Great Pause, um, I was, I think, really smart in using that extra time to then do something that I had always wanted to do, which was to design and manufacture my own annual planner. And I think like people these days, they're like, wait, a planner, like a pen and paper, like does anyone still use that anymore? But they do. There's a huge planner community. I am one of those people. I love pen and paper. I love writing things down. I love time blocking and color coding. And so I decided to take the yoga curriculum that I taught at OCC and put it in this planner and create the first and only yoga lifestyle planner, which consisted of these different yogic modalities like breath work and meditation and different philosophy lessons that I would teach at the college, and I put it in the planner. So that's what I did during the Great Pause, and it's still a really fun passion project of mine. And we come out of the great pause, and here we are again trying to figure out what are we going to do now. And since then, I was able to hop on the train of technology that really took off during the Great Pause, and was able to take everything that I've learned, all of my experience under my belt, and put that into an online digital platform. And so that's how I got hired for Glow, who I work for right now. Glow is an online yoga and fitness platform. And I'm one of the yoga producers. So I work with our teachers on the platform and help them curate the content that they deliver on the platform. And so it's just everything that I'm doing now is such a cool blend of all of the years of experience that I've gained from being in a yoga studio, being in a college environment, starting my own business, understanding how to curate a product that people will want to consume. And yeah, I mean that's how I that's the long story of how I got to
Yeah,
where I am.
I'm I had all these notes written down and like all these like different sections of like chapters of like where I was gonna go with your story, and you just segued straight through it. So yeah,
Oops.
no, you're good, you're good. No. So because I'm so happy that you one explained all of that, because I think that it's really important that obviously everybody knows what order it all went in, but also the different transitions that you went from in connecting the dots, right, from one part to the next to the next. And so thank you for explaining all that in that long form, because I think that kind of helps the audience understand your journey from front to back, right, like where you got to today. But I do have a lot of questions
Yeah.
about that. Starting with your master's program at LMU. So you mentioned only master's program for yoga studies in the country, correct? Okay.
Hmm.
How did you find this? Like, how did you even discover that this like existed?
Yeah. So there is someone who I consider one of my mentors and my guardian angels. Her name is Ashley. We met at Core Power Yoga. She's was one of my fellow teachers there. She went and did the program. How she found out about it, I don't know. I think she was in the third cohort. So the program was brand new. So I'm assuming maybe at that time she just came across a piece of marketing for them. But that's how I found out about the program, was through Ashley. She left Core Power to go do this this master's program. And I call her my guardian angel because I've basically just followed her everywhere. We met at Core Power. She went to LMU. We both left Core Power and went to LMU. And then after she finished at LMU, she started teaching at Orange Coast College. And she was the person who got me the job at Orange Coast College when I graduated from LMU. And her and I are really great friends. And if it wasn't for her and her mentorship, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. So that's something that I find inspiring too, and that I try to take on with other people that I meet who are interested in this industry. Is like, okay, how can I be like an Ashley for other people? Like,
I
how can
love
I
that.
bridge different pathways and different communities and organizations to people who are wanting to be more involved?
I love that. First off, shout out to Ashley. Uh,
Yes.
second, have you had anybody that you've done that for? Like, have you been an Ashley in someone's life? I guess since either like present day.
Oh man, I don't know. I have worked with so many, and I try to be a little bit more specific when I'm speaking now. So instead of saying so many, I want to say I have worked with thousands of different students across the different communities that I've been a part of, which spans geographically from San Diego, Orange County to LA County to the two different college communities that I work for, and now the Lululemon community that I'm a part of. There are a lot of relationships that I've built, and so many of them are, always sharing their gratitude for our relationship. But I don't know. I don't know if I can answer that question right now, off the top of my head, if there's like a specific person that I've bridged
Yeah,
communities for.
I guess I wasn't really asking about specifics, more just like, I guess, have you felt like there's been a lot of positive reinforcement since you started your career as a teacher at the college level? Have you felt like there have been students either coming up to you like either during a free time outside of class or after class where they've expressed their gratitude for what you've given them, as far as either getting them into yoga or changing their life in one aspect or another?
Yeah. Okay. So a perfect example is just recently, one of my students that I met at Cal State Long Beach a couple years ago, she and I have become great friends. She's still a student there, but I started a book club, and she was at our first meeting last night. She has, throughout the semesters that I've known her, has shared how much she's enjoyed my classes and everything that she's learned in class with me. And to see her speak in front of our book club meeting last night with such passion and determination, was so beautiful. And I know that that is through the practice of yoga and all the modalities that we've done together, and just mindful movement in general, which is something that we've really connected on. But I don't want to say that I've, taken her under my wing at all, but she has blossomed into such a beautiful person, and I'm just so proud of her and all the transformation that she's gone through. And to know that I somehow played a little part in that, really just makes me happy.
That's amazing. I love hearing
Yeah.
that. That's so great. It's got to be so fulfilling too. Like that was the whole motivation the whole time, was when you got in, when you had this idea to get into teaching at a college level, it was giving back to the community, but also the benefits of that, which, you're not necessarily asking for, is, having people come up to you and tell you how much it means, to be able to have yoga in their lives, because, and you're the reason why.
Yeah.
There's a
And
small, oh, go ahead.
I will say, anyone listening, if you do take classes, whether it's a yoga class or a fitness class or an academic class, if you do feel so moved by the experience that you're getting, tell your teacher, because that is something that feeds our soul, feeds our heart, and keeps us motivated to give you what we give you. So I just wanted to point that out.
Put it out
When
there.
you're, yeah, when you're feeling grateful, say it. Don't keep it in, share it.
Yeah. Spread that shit. All right.
Yes.
We can cuss on here. I put the
Okay.
explicit thing on there, so we'll just,
Okay, perfect.
um there's one piece of information, a pretty valuable piece of information that you kind of left out of when you were telling your long form story or your journey, which was your trip to India. You went to India.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
yeah, that one piece of it, of a trip that you took to the place where yoga originated, right? That's where yoga
Mhm, mhm.
originated. All
Yep.
right, let's talk about it. You went to India, and this is at the tail end of your studies at LMU.
Mhm.
Okay, what was that like? You went to basically like the mothership of yoga, and
Yeah.
tell me about it.
Uh, it was my mom always used to make fun of me for this. I would always come back from a trip or a festival and be like, she'd ask how it was, and I'd always say it was life changing. So when I say this trip was life changing, I mean it. I mean, like, everything I've done is life changing, but this trip is just like at the top of the top. Um, I've been to a lot of places around the world where you see so many different levels of, where you see so many different classes, I would say, in terms of like social classes. And being able to come to the heartland of where this practice that I hold so near and dear to me came from, and to physically be in that land and in that space where so much has happened, it really does something to you. And um, there is a, I mean, if anyone is familiar with Buddhism, there is, the famous origin story of how this religion was created, where the founder, he comes out of his castle, and where he wasn't supposed to be leaving at all. He sneaks out and sees poverty and sickness and decides, okay, I need to do something about this. And that, I feel like my trip to India sparked that within myself, on such a big, deep level. So I saw different lifestyles and ways of living that you only hear about, but to see it in person, for me at least, it kind of just grabbed me by the heart, and made me feel like if I don't do anything from what I've just seen, then I can't be proud of my life. And so that is when I decided, like, from a humanitarian standpoint, like, how can I take all the education that I'm gaining right now and all of my experience and literally change the world. Like, one of my favorite quotes from Sadhguru is, create goals for yourself that cannot be achieved in your lifetime. And that has stuck with me also, since that trip. It's like, okay, I'm gonna create this goal for myself, which is to bring peace to the entire world. And yeah, that's not gonna happen in my lifetime, but if I can infuse everything that I do with that, then I can be proud of the work that I'm doing. So I spoke to my professor when we were in India. I was completely distraught, having my own kind of aha moment, like coming out of my castle, which I use as a metaphor for being in America and having the lifestyle that I have out here, and then seeing how other people are living around the world, in just using this metaphor of like the Buddha seeing people who were sick and elderly and wanting to do something about that. I was just seeing extreme poverty and forms of slavery, and people being just generally unwell on so many different levels. And my first thought was like, okay, well, I'm going to start volunteering out here in India. Like, I'm going to work at the orphanage. I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to help with the animals out here. Like, just so many ideas of like, what can I do to save the world? And the best piece of advice that my professor there gave me was, the best thing that you can do is to start at home with your communities. If you have this like high level picture of like, I want to do something on a global scale, you have to start at your home and where you currently are. So I took that and ran with it and came home and was like, okay, what can I do within my community, um, to help the younger generations and the older generations heal from whatever it is they're going through so that they can be a thriving individual, and therefore being a thriving individual in their communities, which has a ripple effect around the world.
Excellent. I love that. It's so well said. I mean, like, and if you know Stephanie at all, if you're listening to this and you know Stephanie at all, that theme of just being bringing world peace, it resonates with everybody because you're such a positive light on everybody that you meet, and it's hard for me to ever identify. I was thinking about this, like when I was like putting together these notes for this podcast. I was thinking about just you as a friend, and I'm thinking in my head like, does she ever have like a bad day? Because if not, like I don't. It's hard for me to ever really tell. I've seen you like upset, but I've never really seen you like where you've just been like down and depressed. And I think that anybody that carries that theme with them of striving for world peace, someone who obviously, it sounds like your values kind of surround that idea. It sounds like your core values in life really do kind of surround that idea. Do you think that's the case?
100%. Absolutely. And I think that that is so important. I mentioned earlier yoga is kind of being this guiding light through everything that I do now. I think that that is something that I would love for everyone to realize within themselves. Like, what are your core values, and how can you do everything throughout your day to bring it back to that? Because then that really kind of just infuses your life with so much more magic.
I think about that all the time. So I've told you, and I don't mind sharing this on the podcast because I think it's definitely, I like to put this out there. But when I was in therapy, I had a lot of like issues with anger management. I would get really upset, really angry very, very quickly, and have almost like a short fuse. And one of the things that my therapist told me was how, one, she helped me identify what my core values were. She kind of gave me a little bit of a blueprint of how to put them together. And once I did, then anytime something would happen, it would be, okay, is this affecting my three core values? And if it's not, then it's just, it just goes by the wayside. It just, in one ear, out the other, just let it go. Just completely let it go. And I think that like that's something that a lot of people I think don't do, is they don't really sit down and identify what their core values are. And maybe if they do it, they don't reflect on it on a daily basis. Because I think that if people did do that, they would be much more, I think they'd be happier, but I think that they would feel like there's more purpose in their lives rather than just getting super upset about the tiniest little thing.
Yeah. I'm so excited that you shared that, because whether you realize that or not, that's a form of practicing yoga, is identifying what's important to you. But then, like you said, anytime you get upset or challenged by a situation, you come back mentally to what your core values is before you react. And that is a form of mindfulness. And that is something that is extremely difficult to do. And I want to always remind people that that is a practice that we're all going to have to work on our entire lives. Like, you don't just wake up one morning and you're so mindful that anytime you run into a bad situation, you're like, does this affect my core value? And then you react a different way. Like, that practice is going to ebb and flow throughout your life. There's going to be some maybe days or weeks or months or years where you are really good at that. And you're like, wow, I'm crushing it. Like, I'm so present, I'm mindful, like I'm not reactive. Things are great. And then there's the ebb and flow, where for whatever reason, well, in yoga, we have something called samskaras, which are these mental imprints or mental behaviors that you're just so used to that behavioral or mental pattern that you kind of just like groove back into that. And so it's natural. It's natural to ebb and flow and to have rhythms in your life of where you're doing really great and then you're doing really shitty. And so that's what I always remind my students is like, your breath, and I use this as like the first part of mindfulness is like your breath and your physical posture is like the first part of practicing mindfulness. Like throughout your day, can you come back to checking in with your breath and notice if you're breathing improperly or in a way that isn't serving your health? And in turn, is that also affecting your posture? Like, are you rounding your back or in your shoulders? Is your spine, not in axial extension? Like it's so connected. And just that little practice of thinking about your breath and your posture throughout your day is part of mindfulness. And so taking it one step further to your core values and coming back to that before you react in a challenging situation is an act of mindfulness. So I absolutely love that you're doing that. And yeah, it's going to be a lifelong practice. So when you realize that you may have slipped up, then you take the component in yoga called ahimsa, which is loving kindness and compassion, and have compassion with yourself that you're just a human being and that you have samskaras, you have these mental and behavioral imprints that began at conception while you were in your mother's womb that affect how you've lived your whole life. And this piece of mindfulness or practice of mindfulness is to help you and to teach you about those samskaras so that you can be a better person and take what you've learned through mindfulness and being aware of your samskaras and your shadows, and basically making lemonade out of lemons and taking what you've learned and passing that on to your children or passing that on to the communities that you're a part of. So it's I think too a piece of being mindful and being aware of these samskaras um is oh, I lost my train of thought. I got all excited. I had all these things. Okay, table that.
Yeah. So
Scratch that
actually,
part out.
no, you're good. You're good. I got something that's gonna kind of still stay on this topic because I do
Yeah.
want to ask you about this. And this is another practice that I had while I was in therapy was developing a mantra. And so
Mm.
I feel like when I've gone into yoga, to a yoga class, there's typically a theme or a mantra that is like the theme of the class, right? Like this is what we're going to focus on um, at the beginning of the class. As you're stretching, going through the motions, there, the theme is still there, but then you bring it back at the very end to what that mantra was all about. And it's ever changing, right? Like I feel like every time I've gone in, it's been something different. Is that usually the case? Is that usually how it rolls?
Typically, when an instructor is planning out their class, which consists of sequencing what poses they're going to do in an intelligent way, you also want to offer up a lesson or a theme, as you mentioned. And what I like to do is tie that into the physical sequence somehow. And also deliver the lesson in a digestible way to and the best way to do that is through my own story and how that might relate to somebody else in the class, and then even better tying it back into a yogic philosophy or how it relates back to these 1,000-year-old practices.
The reason why I ask is because I was a little confused because we have the mantras that I hear about when practicing yoga, but for me, mine was uh, it brought me back to a certain like emotional and mental place. But it was a saying that whenever I started to feel like things were starting to spiral out of control, I was reaching like a boiling point. It was a mantra that I would say to myself to bring me back to a calm mental state and, cool things down.
Mm.
it, is that is there, are there multiple meanings behind a mantra, or like I'm kind of
So
trying to figure out like if maybe the therapist got it wrong and it wasn't actually called a mantra or something, it's called
no, no,
something
no.
else.
Your therapist is right, and maybe I misunderstood the first question. So sometimes there are mantra. So let me go back. A mantra is a vehicle or tool, a meditation tool that comes from yoga, and a mantra can either be a word or a phrase or like a sentence. Um, it could also be as short as a syllable. A very popular Sanskrit syllable is Om. And so it can be as short as that, or it can be as long as a sentence. And so you take that syllable, word, or sentence, and you use that mantra as a form of meditation, as a tool to get your mind back to the present moment. Um, and so I wonder then if the therapist suggested using a mantra, because typically when you're in such a high emotional state, it's because your mind is kind of going in all of these different directions, and you need a tool to ground you back down to like what's actually happening in the moment right then and there. And the best way to do that is to come back to your body. And the best way to come back to your body is through breath. And when you have a mantra, whether you're reciting it out loud or just in your mind, that's involving your breath. So I think that it was really smart of your therapist to offer up using a mantra or a tool. And in terms of mantras being in a yoga class, sometimes teachers will use a mantra as a tool to support their theme, but it's not always something that teachers put in their classes. It's kind of like an extra fun thing that a teacher might incorporate to supplement and support what they're talking about, but it's not always necessary.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you for clearing that
Yeah.
up, because I was really curious about that. Like when I was putting all these questions together and everything, I that came to mind, and I was like, well, there's nobody better to ask about this than you. So, thanks for clearing that up.
Happy to.
Yeah. So let's we're gonna continue down the timeline here, and we're gonna go right into what you were talking about when you started your own business with Prana Planner. So let's start out by asking, okay, so where did this? So the idea was basically driven while you were starting to teach at OCC. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah. So I had started teaching at OCC, then the great pause happened.
Right.
And so I had all this free time and decided that I was going to utilize this free time and do my passion project, which was creating my own planner. But because I started teaching at the college, I'm going to create the first yoga planner and put that curriculum into the planner. So that was kind of like how it all started.
Gotcha. Okay. So the design is actually really dope. If you haven't seen it, just get your hands on one. I believe there's still some copies left for 2024. Is that correct?
Well, actually, 2024, I'm focusing on our guided seasonal journal.
Ooh.
So we don't have an annual planner this year, but I'm so excited to bring it back for 2025.
All right.
I wanted to utilize this year to kick off a second product. And so that's what I'm doing right now with the journal. And then in future years, I can simultaneously have the journal and a planner.
What is the
Um,
difference between what the journal brings versus what the planner brings?
So in the journal, so I call it a seasonal guided journal, and it's based off the Panchamaya Kosha model, which comes from yoga, obviously. And it states that there are 5 different dimensions or layers to the human body that need to be met in a healthy way to help you thrive. So the journal is intended to begin using at any turn of the season. So any spring equinox, summer solstice, fall equinox, and winter solstice, those are the best times to start using the journal. And there's a reflection component and a planning component in the journal, which is prompted. And so, based on these layers of the human body, which involve your physical body, your mental body, your emotional body, your intellectual body, and your cosmic body, you reflect on, okay, this past winter, I ate like shit. I wasn't working out. I wasn't hanging out with my friends. I wasn't doing anything to help my career. I wasn't in community. Like, just as an example, like you would be prompted to reflect on these different dimensions of our body. Um, and then you would make your plans for the upcoming season of how you're going to address those. So you would reflect and plan at the turn of the season, and then every week the journal guides you to do the same exact thing where you're reflecting on the past week and planning for the next week based on what your goals were that you outlined at the beginning of the season. So that's what the journal is about. I definitely want to incorporate that into the planner for 2025. Um, but yeah, I thought that doing this journal was important because, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, like there's a lot of people who don't use planners and use a form of a digital calendar these days. And so I wanted to offer the same type of exercises and journaling prompts to someone who might be a digital calendar person, but still want to be involved in the practice of journaling, which I have found to be such a helpful tool to reflect on what your samskaras are, your mental and behavioral imprints. I find that when you journal, because journaling is such a personal and intimate experience, like I hope that when anyone is journaling, like they are just completely transparent with themselves. And that's kind of when it's a form of release and healing and meditation. And so when you journal, you're like, okay, oh my gosh, this happened and it made me feel this way. Next time I'm going to handle that situation this way. So it was important for me to create the journal and have it be a separate offering from the planner. And I'm really excited for it. They're beautiful too. So check them out.
Where can someone get one?
Pranaplanner.com. Check it out online.
I will put the link
Also,
in the show notes, so don't worry. Yeah, we'll
yes,
promote it.
yeah. I got really lucky with the domain names. So really easy, pranaplanner.com, and on Instagram at pranaplanner.
There we go. Perfect. Actually really like that idea because I think that especially if, you hear about it all the time where growing up females they have their diary, right? And so they're constantly writing down all these things, all these emotions that they're going through, especially at such a transitional period in their life. Whereas guys, not you don't really hear about that. You don't really hear about guys having like diaries that they wrote these things down. And the older I get, the more I start to analyze and have more self-reflection, and the more I start to wonder, okay, are all of these other factors in my life adding up to the reason why I feel this specific way about anything, whether it be like, socially, or whether it be here at home, with my wife and with my kid, and being able to use a tool like a journal to be able to identify those things, I think is very important. And it can just be so easy to just be like, okay, that happened, I felt this way, or I reacted this way, and then just shove it to the side. And then all of a sudden you start to notice that it becomes a pattern. And then you start to notice, okay, well, what's the root of this? What's the root of why I have reactions like this? And I think if you start to journal, you'll be able to dive deeper, but also be able to discover the root of that and how to essentially fix, where you might be going wrong. And so, for all you guys out there, don't be afraid. Grab a journal, start writing that stuff down.
I also want to add to that, there was a recent Huberman episode where he shares, I think it was like a 200 peer reviewed practice or piece of research that talks about journaling. And so if anyone feels some sort of stigmatism towards journaling, Andrew Huberman has this perfect practice for you, which doesn't require a full-blown journal. It requires 4 pieces of paper. And I haven't yet tried this myself. I'm really excited to put this in my planner and make sure I get this done. But you essentially, for 15 minutes, you write on this piece of paper a time in your life that might have been super challenging or traumatizing, and and then you do that again 3 more times, and you can either do it in throughout 4 days, like 4 days in a row, you take 15 minutes and you journal or write about this traumatic experience, or you can spread it over the course of 4 weeks, and you, for 15 minutes, let's say you do it on Monday, like every Monday for those 4 weeks in a row, I'm going to take 15 minutes and I'm going to journal about this same exact traumatic experience. And the results of this is that by the 4th time, your perspective of that experience has changed, I believe in a more positive light. So I would love to reference that episode too, and point to some actual research that's being done on the practice of journaling and how healing it can be. So
Yeah,
definitely check out that
absolutely.
episode.
We will throw that also in the show notes for anybody interested in learning more about that. Um, Dude, we have so much stuff left for me to cover. I know. I was like looking at the clock and I was like, oh man, I said I'd keep this at an hour, but I'm looking at my list and I'm like, dude, I got so many other things I want to talk to you about. So I want to get to just, I'm gonna pick like 2 things here. So let's talk about fireside chats. I want to know. All right, so break down for me what fireside chats is, how it started, how you became a part of it, and how it's benefited the people that have been involved in it.
So, fireside chat is actually my idea that I started when I became a Lululemon ambassador. And I wanted to offer our community something deeper than a physical practice. And I mean, Lululemon, obviously, it's an apparel company that supports you while you're working out, while you're practicing yoga, any type of physical movement. At Lululemon, it's important for us to sweat every day. So, we already have that nailed down. I wanted to come up with something that takes things a little bit deeper, of course. And so I know the power of community and the power of circling up. And what I mean by circling up is just literally gathering in a circle and being able to be in a safe circle, a safe container where you feel comfortable talking about whatever it is going on in your life. And so I created Fireside Chat. The name comes from the fireside that we sit around at the shopping center here in Long Beach. And I come up with different prompts that I facilitate, and I, share at the beginning of our circle that we're going to split up into different partner groups throughout the next hour, and I will be guiding a prompt. I never like to share what the prompt is ahead of time because I want the exercise to also involve the person thinking about that prompt right then and there and truthfully answering it from their heart without having any predetermined answers. Because that's, an exercise in and of itself. And it's really cool because the person on the other side getting to hear what this person has to say is also then practicing listening. I encourage, if you're on the other side of that, can you fully give this person all of your attention without thinking about how you're going to answer the question? So it's this really fun, enlightening, and inspiring hour where we get together once a month. And sometimes the topics have people crying, and sometimes the topics have people feeling really inspired and light at the end of it. So, yeah, I'm happy to say that that's something that I brought to Lululemon, and I really hope that I can continue that even after my ambassadorship is over, whenever that time comes. And that's another reason why I started my book club too. There's such power in circling up with community and sharing information and sharing learned lessons that we all gain from our own different life experiences. I fully believe in unity and being stronger together, and so that's the main reason why Fireside was born.
If someone wanted to attend, you got a listener out there lives in the Long Beach area, they're like, that sounds awesome, I would love to be a part of that. How do they get in touch with you, or how do they when is it, and how can they start attending?
So the dates change every month, and the best way to find out about when they're happening is going to be through the Instagram. So follow at Prana Planner on Instagram, and whenever I have Fireside or any other events, public events, I'll always post that on there as well. If you're not on social media, you can sign up for the Prana Planner newsletter on my website, pranaplanner.com. I promise I won't blast you. It's usually kind of maybe once a month, if that, where I will share my public facing events.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap this up just because I know for the listeners out there, I try to keep it at an hour because attention span is rough these days, and this has been amazing. I mean, as far as one, me having my breakthrough and starting this podcast, but two, being able to have you as the first guest. Man, I'm so thankful. And this really does mean a lot to me personally. So there is one last thing I want to talk to you about. All right. So what is the dream? What's the goal? What's the end goal here? So you got, okay. So like, let's say, right now, so you're teaching, are you teaching at Cal State Long Beach?
Right now, I'm actually their wellness coordinator.
Okay.
So I was teaching for them, and then my role transitioned to this wellness coordinator position, which is essentially providing and curating wellness programs for the student body.
Okay. So I'm asking this because, like, let's go like 10 years from now, right? We're going to put this out into the universe, right? Because that's how things end up fruitioning. So let's put it out there. 10 years from now, all right, what's the dream here, Steph? You
Oh gosh.
whether it be in education, whether it be with your own side hustle businesses, just give me one that has been like the big picture. Man, this would be all time if I got here to this point in my career.
All time big picture goal would be that I have put myself in a position within the higher education system that provides tools for students, that provides life management tools and interpersonal communication skills and lifelong learning skills on a statewide, if not nationwide level, with the use and utilization of Prana Planner supplementing that. So long term, I'd love my baby Prana Planner to just blossom and take off. And with that, I would love that kind of to like ride alongside my other dream of providing these tools and services for the younger generations. So it's kind of like a two-handed or a hand-in-hand kind of dream and hope that I can only imagine is going to happen. And I guess that's the mentality that you have to have when you're starting something on your own, is like, you know what, it may not work, but what if it does?
I
Why
think
not try
that's the
it?
mentality that got you this far, right? So,
Yeah.
cheers to that. Yeah, I love it. Hell yeah. Let's put that out there. So 10 years from now, if you are, let's see, if you are, well, I guess I don't think there's going to be any like 8-year-olds that are going to be listening to this, but for those parents out there that may have a 7 or 8-year-old, when their kid goes to college and they wonder, they look at the report card and say their kid took a yoga class at his college university, they want to know who was the OG that started this in the first place. They can look right here at Stephanie Serrano. So,
Yes.
yes. So, again, thank you so much for joining me. It has been an absolute pleasure. Again, everything as far as the Prana Planner, where you can find it, Fireside Chats, the Huberman podcast you talked about, will all be in the show notes. I love you.
Love you
Appreciate
so
you.
much. I'm
Yeah.
so excited for you and for Friends with Lens. I'm truly honored to be your first guest, and I can't wait to see where this goes.
Love you. Appreciate it. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.